Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Ben Ark from LN Bits. Ben. Vlad Costa from Bitcoin Takeover Magazine.
Greetings, my friends. I have been expecting you.
Kyle Forkey from Amentum. Stephen Mackey, also from Amentum.
Hey guys, good morning. It's Kyle. I hope everyone had a productive week.
And
Hey,
Stephen
guys.
Mackey from Amentum, say hello.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Looks like
Good to
we lost Ben, but hopefully he'll be back with us soon. Moving on to issue one. Issue one, Blackrock says clients are buying Bitcoin to hedge against the U.S. debt crisis. They say that Bitcoin is certainly risky, but it's not a risk asset. The company says that clients may flock to Bitcoin during a crisis, and that some of Bitcoin's defining attributes are its limited supply, global nature, and ease of transfers across borders, which is what I've been saying for years. Ben Ark, what do you think about BlackRock suddenly saying that Bitcoin is a hedge against the U.S. debt crisis?
I think so. There's a couple of things at play, isn't there? They are selling a product, so they are going to sell that product. But this Larry Fink guy, he does seem like a legitimate someone who gets the Bitcoin thesis and the properties of Bitcoin. And he's spoken quite publicly about it. He said that it's a legitimate financial tool that allows you to have maybe uncorrelated, non-correlated types of returns. So he sounds like someone who understands what Bitcoin is. But then he could just be playing to the crowd, and they could just be shilling a product to their customers. But this is a fund which has like $10 trillion worth of assets, which is a huge amount of money. It's very significant for Bitcoin that there's an entity like BlackRock, which is so invested in it and is speaking so publicly about it, and then writing this paper about it as well. So a very interesting article, really, to see. But I mean, they are, as we've had happen so many times when we review these articles in this show, they're basically regurgitating things we've been saying for a decade. But they caught up, and that's okay. It's okay to be late to the party, and to be fair, they're not even late to the party. They're still pretty early. It's good. It will be good for the Bitcoin price. It's quite incredible that the price hasn't shifted more. I think it's just there's a delay in people realizing just how limited the amount of Bitcoins are out there in the ecosystem. But as soon as people catch up to that concept, I think the price is going to go pretty catastrophically high. Not catastrophically high. It's gonna shoot up. So good news, big fund. We might be talking bollocks just selling a product, but I actually think this Larry Fink guy and BlackRock more generally do understand the Bitcoin proposal.
Vlad Costa, what do you think? They sound like a bunch of Bitcoiners.
Well, first of all, I gotta ask you, Thomas, did you ever have a guest open a bottle of wine in the middle of the intro of the episode and plan to drink it by the end of it?
I think
that's the important question.
Theo was at a bar one time, but that was a different story.
Well, I'm at home right now, and I'm gonna get what Ben calls sazzled. But regardless of that, I think that BlackRock is not being honest about the product that they're selling, because their ETF does not have the global distribution of Bitcoin, does not have the peer-to-peer, permissionless qualities, and they're just advertising their own product, which is the ETF, as if it's the real thing, which is not. So I don't know. It's sketchy. But I don't think they said directly buy Bitcoin from whatever exchange or peer-to-peer from ATMs or whatever. They said that they do believe that Bitcoin is good for investments to hedge against inflation in the US. So I'm pretty sure that means that you're supposed to buy their ETF, and their ETF is not Bitcoin. There's a very important distinction to be made between the two products.
I think it's an excellent point, Vlad. You'd have difficulty getting access to your Bitcoin, especially on the weekends when the bank is closed. Imagine during a crisis. Let's go to Kyle Forkey. What do you think about BlackRock writing this epic white paper supporting Bitcoin?
Well, I guess one, you can't trust anything BlackRock says. Doesn't mean it's not true, but you have to approach them with an inherent grain of salt, whatever. But on top of that, I'm sure a lot of people in crypto can relate with me when, like I say, I cannot imagine a more generic statement than, acknowledging what Bitcoin is, saying something about regulatory concerns, and then saying some, nebulous, giving some kind of nebulous foresight as to where it could go. It is like, that's just whatever everybody says. It's like there's AI probably wrote it. AI probably wrote the headline or wrote what his statement was. So that's my thoughts.
It does seem like they're bellying up to the Bitcoiners pretty good. It could be any other ETF, and they'd be saying the Diamond ETF is a great hedge against the U.S. debt crisis. Let's go to Stephen Mackey. What do you think about the new paper from BlackRock?
Well, I guess coming off the popularity of the ETF in the media and the coverage from it thus far, I mean, it makes sense that, these larger institutions will eventually have made some types of like statements that would be positive towards, the products that they're selling. And, like the other gentleman stated as well, I agree. Like it's the same stuff regurgitated that we've heard from the past 10 years, just basically like remixed and, said a slightly different way. It's no one ever says anything too inherently like risky. They just say, oh, Bitcoin could be worth more money in the future. Like, and we're trying to be here for that. Like, well, that's been going on for like quite some time. So I think that means like the general like community, like even when they hear these things, when it comes to like price speculation, that doesn't really draw a big speculative, interest, out of me, or I don't think anyone really anymore, just because we've heard it so many times. So it's like, I don't think adoption and names that coincide with that are really going to play too large into like price. Like I think it's going to matter with like actual money coming into the space and conservatively over a long period of time. But time will tell.
It looks like everyone but me is not excited and thinks it's mainly a press release from BlackRock. Let's move on to the exit question. As Mackie was saying, this might cause the price of Bitcoin to rise. So we're going to ask the Magic 8 Ball, the source of all truth and knowledge in this universe. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Let's start with Ben Ark. Will the price be higher or lower next week?
I think there's a fucking rodent in my shed. It's freaking me out. So if I jump up and start flying around, then that's because there's a rodent in there. Yep. People are gonna, I don't know. Lower, fuck it, lower. I want to say higher, but lower.
Vlad Costa, higher or lower?
The last time I was on the show, I was the bear, and I turned out to be right. So I'm gonna say lower.
Sticking with lower. Kyle Forkey, higher or lower?
This time next week, Bitcoin is going to be 64,933.14, or a little higher. Yeah.
Finally, an exact prediction on this show. Exact prediction. Excellent, Kyle. Let's go to Mackie. What would you say, higher or lower?
I would say for Kyle, I hope you better not be a penny off. But for me, I would just say I'm gonna have to stick with the tried and true old generic higher. Simply because we're breaking into the holiday season. So if there was going to be any time for any type of like breakaway action, and there was some sort of buildup or some like media attempt by which to like do so, it would make sense that they're trying to do this for like the end of the quarter, to like solidify the product for the first year, right? You would want the first year that these ETFs have been like made available to like be like successful on paper, right? To like have that trend there. So it would make sense that they would put in as much effort as they could right now. So more than likely, I would imagine that, it'll be higher, but we'll see. Hopefully it's exactly what Kyle says.
So most of the panel is saying higher, but we'll say what the Magic 8 Ball says. Now, of course, shaking the ball can cause bubbles. Watch out for that. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? And it says, really difficult to read. Reply hazy, try again. Reply hazy, try again. So there you go. Check back next week. Moving on to issue 2. Trump becomes the first president to pay in Bitcoin. Says it's very easy. Former President Donald Trump was in a New York City bar called PubKey on Wednesday, where he, quote unquote, became the first former U.S. president to ever use Bitcoin to complete a transaction. Trump used the cryptocurrency to pay for burgers and beers he bought for PubKey, allegedly using the Lightning Network. It looked like a lot of people stood next to him, so we'll have to see and watch more videos. But let's go to Vlad Costa. What do you think about Donald Trump being the first former president to use Bitcoin that we know of?
Well, he hasn't really made that payment, right? He tried at first to scan the QR code, which is what you should do, but I think there's an issue with these Lightning wallets that sometimes they don't focus on the QR code on the other screen. So you need to take it. So if you watch the footage once again, you're gonna see that his assistant or whatever took the phone and tried to pull it back a bit just to help the camera focus. And he realized it's not that easy. It was probably still blurry on the screen. So it took them like 30 seconds to be able to just scan that, and then they pressed pay. And after they did press pay, they were concerned the payment was going to fail, right? Because sometimes that happens on the Lightning Network. The irony of the situation is that they were paying from basically a bank, a custodian, which is Strike, and they were paying to, I guess, the terminal. The interface on the terminal was BTC Pay Server. So they were paying to possibly another node. And it took them another 30 seconds. And I don't think it was the proudest moment for Bitcoin. Because, first of all, it wasn't Trump who did that. It wasn't that easy. And the person paying was a bit concerned that the payment was going to fail. And he actually celebrated the moment that he saw that it's going through. But I think the winner of the whole situation, or at least in his soul, is David Bailey. Because if you watch him from this footage, he's behind them and he's having the time of his life. He's so happy. He's smiling. He's thrilled. He's taking pictures. It's almost like this has been his kindergarten dream, to grow up and become this person who stands behind Trump and takes pictures. And he's finally actually living the dream. This is exactly what he wanted to accomplish with his life, and he is finally at it. This is the moment. This is his time to shine. He's very proud. I love David Bailey for this.
Oh, what an incredible moment for David Bailey.
I'm also
Kyle,
drunk, so don't take me seriously.
you only had one or two. Kyle Forkey, what do you think Donald Trump allegedly paid for some burgers in a Bitcoin bar?
I guess just to play devil's advocate for the last response, like, man, you guys know how difficult it is. Older people interacting with any kind of anything. I'm surprised. I'd be surprised if Trump was able to get the scanner up on his phone. That by itself would be very impressive. My father he couldn't do it. Doesn't matter how many times I showed him. And then I think we all have that like, thing in the back of our head whenever we send any kind of crypto transaction, like, oh, did I put in the right address, whatever. There's just like this thing in the back of your head. You're just a little bit nervous. And I can imagine being that assistant or whoever sent the transaction. You got the former president, all these people, all eyes on you, and you're scanning this thing, you're sweating. Like, I'd be nervous. I'd celebrate if it went through, regardless. But all that aside, it seems like one of those overly specific headlines. Like, this is the longest 8 guys have, marched in a circle for 5 days. Like, it's a world record, but it's so overly specific. Like, the first president, the first, trash man to pay with Bitcoin. It's whatever. It's neat, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's just just a headline, I suppose. I don't think it really means anything by itself.
It is a tough situation for the assistant. It's difficult to scan the QR code. He could have at least had Trump push the send button. That would have
Yeah.
helped. I would have liked that, some kind of connection to it where it really seems like he's standing next to a guy who's paying for Bitcoin. Let's go to Stephen Mackey. What do you think? The former president uses Bitcoin. Maybe we should all buy his World Liberty financial product.
I do not back any World Liberty financial products, but I will say, um, for the longest time, we've been waiting for either a presidential candidate or some hopeful to like eventually say Bitcoin, and then like it happened, and then we had like the whole Andrew Yang running for president thing, and then like the topic of crypto and using crypto as a means to like raise money for an election, like that became a thing. And so like now it made sense to eventually get to the point where like, oh, the president is using Bitcoin. But even at that, like at this point, like, crypto's been around for like 10 plus years. So it's almost like saying like Trump finally figured out how to use an iPhone. It's like, okay, there's this basic functionality and thing. Like, I don't even think it even solidifies Bitcoin as it makes it any more legitimate. I think it's just a thing that somebody like did. Like, again, like we can't continue to be amazed by people doing the smallest things anymore. It's almost like it just doesn't scratch that itch.
They'll likely have a similar story if Trump orders his own Uber. President orders first Uber ever ordered by a president.
Yeah, exactly. Great example. I feel like tech competency has gotten so blanketed and common in just the average normal everyday person's life that it's just like, oh, you figured out how to use an app. Like, I don't think that's a headline.
It is true what Kyle said. Older people do have trouble. I know I gave my parents a like an ordering food app, and they had a hard time ordering lunch. So it is a different accomplishment, though. Let's go to Ben Ark. What do you think about the former president paying in Bitcoin?
I mean, I don't think he has problems using his phone, clearly, by the amount of shit posting the dude does. He knows his way around a phone. It was a bit of a payment terminal fail. Should have used Allen Bits. I was watching the little video and I was thinking, should have used Allen Bits. The QR codes are a bit clearer, a bit easier to scan. But yeah, it's not a real Bitcoin transaction, as we all know. And he wasn't really using the Lightning Network to pay for something because someone else was holding the bloody phone for him and pressing the button. So somebody else made a payment on his behalf. He's also not the first president, of course, to make a Bitcoin transaction. We got our mate Bukele down in El Salvador there, and he knows how to use a Lightning wallet. So good PR. There is a moment like with the Lightning Network, which I quite like when you do a payment and it's instant, in that the penny kind of drops. Like, wow, that was it. I just sent some Bitcoin, usually or hopefully from yourself to somebody else, but if you're using a custodial service, maybe not. And it is very fast. It's the transaction settles quicker than if it's done properly, then it settles quicker than a Visa transaction. So hopefully that he had that experience afterwards when the cameras weren't rolling and he paid again and it happened and it went through quicker. But there is something quite profound when you make a Bitcoin transaction over Lightning Network and it's so quick, it's so usable, and there's no user data attached to it. And the experience does kind of stay with you and you think, okay, well, this really has some legs to it. So it's good that he's, I'll play devil's advocate. I think it's a good thing that he had that experience. It's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. Well done, Andrew Bailey. I'm with Vlad. I like Andrew Bailey a lot, and this clearly means a lot to him. So for the brief period in
Also
which...
like Andrew Bailey, but that's the author of the book Resistance Money or something like that, which you received, and it uses your logo with the fist and the Bitcoin. But we're speaking of David Bailey.
Oh, sorry, David Bailey. That's what I mean. Bitcoin conference, David Bailey. Yeah. What I don't know why I said Andrew Bailey. David Bailey. He's always been good to me. He's always been good to Fly. He's always been good to a bunch of us. And he does a lot of work behind the scenes, supporting free and open source people, which people don't really give him credit for. So I've got a lot of time for the dude, and this was very important to him. And I'm glad he had his little moment, which he got to enjoy. Like Vlad said, he was giddy with excitement. And I'm sure that experience personally cost him a lot of money to get to that point. So, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I just wish they'd used Allen bits. Would have been quicker. And on that note, we have a last week, I think I did a 20-minute tutorial where I span up an Allen bits with Phoenix, backed by Phoenix D. So self-custodial managed Lightning node by async on a server with its own domain, and it took like 15 minutes, and that's me moving quite slow as well. So 15 minutes to end up with a self-custodial Lightning node, which works very well and works well for payments and things. They should have used that solution. Maybe I'll send them a DM, the bar. But yeah, so check that out. It's on the Allen Bits YouTube if anyone's interested in watching that tutorial and spinning up an Allen Bits. But it's good. It's good. It's good press, you know. And David Bailey had his moment, and Trump had that experience of paying for something over Lightning, which I think is very important for people. So yeah, good. Tick.
I'll try not to get too political, but it is kind of a Schrodinger's cat situation where on one hand they could have just taken a picture with the next president, the next leader of the free world, or they could have taken the picture with someone who will be in jail or house arrest soon. So it is very interesting to see how the election turns out, which one of those he'll become. But let's keep moving. Check out World Crypto Network at worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,988 videos you could check out. If you watch them consecutively, it would take you 3 months, 20 days, and 3 hours without any sleep at all at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3, Louisiana says yes to using Bitcoin to pay for utility bills. The adoption of cryptocurrencies has reached a historic milestone in the United States, with the state of Louisiana announcing that it officially accepts Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a means of payment for public services. This could lead to other governments and other states and countries adopting Bitcoin to pay taxes and utility bills, etc. Let's go to Kyle Forkey. What do you think about Louisiana accepting Bitcoin?
You know, actually, it was, I think, in like 2017 or 18, I can't remember, but the mayor of Lafayette and his right-hand man, they flew me down in the interest of doing an ICO for one of their townships, like a smaller area within Lafayette. And, you know, they had this very, very elaborate outline of how they wanted to do everything. And I was very interested, but, you know, it was beyond me. It was beyond my means. I was like, you guys, I'm just some guy. I don't, you know, I can't put all this together. You need some more heavy hitters on board. And so I guess I always wondered how that turned out for them, because I know the project didn't take off, and it looks like they've been making moves this whole time. For some reason, Louisiana is just for the past almost 10 years, they've been very, very interested in crypto adoption, and I mean, I could see them taking some kind of a leading role in the coming decades in this space. As unlikely as it seems now, their mindset is extraordinarily progressive for, I think, how, you know, most people probably would think they were off the cuff. Just doesn't seem like it would be a crypto haven, but maybe.
I do think that when you look from the outside, you'd think more California, New York, or one of the larger states would be the crypto state, but maybe Louisiana. Maybe Katrina knocked them off and made them think differently about the world, changed their outlook.
It's possible.
It was a major disaster. It would certainly affect you if you live there. Let's go to Stephen Mackey. What do you think about Louisiana accepting Bitcoin for utility bills, taxes, other things?
Yeah. So to piggyback on the thing that Kyle was talking about, I remember talking to that gentleman from Lafayette, Louisiana. He reached, I think he reached out, and then I connected him to Kyle. Because Kyle was living in Florida, so it was much closer to Louisiana. And I was like, hey, there's these people that are planning this thing for their centennial, and they wanted to like be like the first like digital first city to like use like crypto payments and all this stuff. But again, this was like 2017, 2018. So it was still like very early as far as doing something on that level, but their head was in the right space. So that anecdotally, so it would make sense that they've made some pretty solid progress as far as like making partnerships and like at least having conversations with people, because like they were very nice, to like reach out and like have conversation with us. So yeah, I think that we'll probably see a lot more of that from more of these seemingly more conservative places where there are, intelligent people with money that have been investing in Bitcoin, for say like 10 plus like odd years. And you'll see it like, not just for like state and tax purposes and stuff like that, but for other interesting use cases like this, that actually like make sense long term. And even with countries like El Salvador, like kind of like leading the pack of, like being like very Bitcoin progressive and how they present themselves and how that's like kind of a very good like PR, like method for like getting interest in the country. It would make sense that on a state level and by a city basis that other people would sort of like replicate the, that type of like, idealism, and so that they can get like, new crypto wealth or younger people into an area. So I think yeah, I think it's not surprising, and I would hope that there'd be more of that sooner rather than later.
Well, it sounds like an exciting project. Hopefully sets an example for the other states. And it's neat that you and Kyle had a personal involvement there. It's very interesting stuff. Let's go to Ben Ark. What do you think? Louisiana, a state in the United States, for the international crowd, is accepting Bitcoin. What do you think?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I would say that, for a merchant, one of the best ways to accumulate some Bitcoin is just to accept Bitcoin, and then you get a few payments here and there in Bitcoin. And then you stick that in your stack, in your treasury. And this is probably part of a play where they're going to try and accumulate some Bitcoin for Louisiana as a speculative asset or something. And it's an easy play for them because there will be some Bitcoiners out there who'll be giddy at the fact that they can pay their bills in Bitcoin. And then they get to internally, they get to handle the Bitcoin. Whether they'll use the Lightning Network or not, I'm not sure. They should. And if they do, then they'll have to loop out to on-chain to put it into cold storage, using a service like Bolts, for doing atomic swaps or something. So they get to play around with the stack, the Bitcoin stack, and the software solutions which we've made, which are profoundly good. So when they experience that, these are public sector figures who'll then be on Bitcoin's side because it works well. The great example from El Salvador was, in El Salvador, when you get a utility bill, you just get a QR code and you just scan it, pay it. And in a country like El Salvador, where they have 90+% of their GDP is remittances from the US, you get a text from your mom, and she's in El Salvador, and she says, "Oh, I need to pay this bill. I haven't got enough money." Boom, you send her some sats from your wallet to her wallet, and then boom, she pays the bill, and that whole process takes 20 seconds over the phone. And that's incredible. That's an incredible experience. And when I first saw that in El Salvador, that somebody paying a utility bill just by scanning the QR code and paying it, I thought, that they kind of leapfrog it's much better than my system if I'm to pay utility bills, if I'm to fiddle around with a bank account and set up direct debits and whatever else. So a good thing. It's a good thing. More exposure for people playing with the Bitcoin stack and learning all the great tools which are being built for Bitcoin.
It sounds fantastic. I just hope they keep everything secure while they're playing with that stack. It can be a very easy thing for one person in the department to run off with. So I hope they do a good job of that. Vlad Costa, what do you think about Louisiana accepting Bitcoin?
Well, of course, it was going to happen deep down in Louisiana, across the New Orleans, way back up in the woods, across the Evergreens. There lived a boy or something.
There stood a log cabin made of earth and wood.
And
lived
where
a
lived a
country
country
boy.
boy named Johnny B. Good, who never learned to read or write so well, but he could play guitar just like ringing a bell. So, of course, Louisiana is a good place to start adopting Bitcoin, because obviously the purpose of Bitcoin is to give it to your government, right?
I think that's what all the hardcore Bitcoiners they said. They said, if only I could pay my taxes with this non-government, non-bank, diverse, cryptocurrency.
No, but I do recall at one point there was Noriel Rubini. God bless his soul. He's such a nice guy. And he blocked me because I called him a Bitcoin maximalist when he started calling out shitcoins. And he did say that Bitcoin is not money because you cannot pay taxes with it. And I'm pretty sure that Paul Krugman and guys like, what's the other one? Stiglitz or something, they would very much agree that Bitcoin is not legit money because you cannot pay taxes with it. So now what's the next excuse, right? Why is it not money anymore? They're gonna say, oh, it's not fungible because it doesn't have any privacy. I don't know. But it's fun. It's fun we got to this point because the FUDsters have fewer arguments and they're getting weaker over time. So I don't care much about paying taxes with Bitcoin. I think actually it's anti-Bitcoin in some regard because this was started as anti-governmental money or non-governmental money. But I guess this is part of what they call hyper-Bitcoinization, and we're all along for the ride.
Excellent stuff. I definitely agree with that. I'll have to see how it turns out. I think the main positive in this could be them convincing other states to do it. As far as for people paying their taxes or utilities with bills with Bitcoin, I'm not sure about that. And I'm especially not sure how it's going to work out when someone comes banging on the tax door saying, I paid a zero point 0.1 Bitcoin a year ago and now it's worth $5,000 and I want this and that. So they might have a problem with that. Whereas with the dollar, it moves so slowly, I don't think people notice. But let's keep moving. Let's go on to issue 4. The crypto bros who dream of crowdfunding a new country. A very, very long article in the BBC that I don't think anybody read, and even I skimmed, says that Balaji and others from Andreessen Horowitz and other Silicon Valley backers want to make their own governments. They want to live in their own country. They have big pockets, but seem to be so far trusting most of their work to a man in a hoodie who suggests that you photocopy pages from his manifesto and post it around town. It's a very long article, but they're spending lots of money to chase this idea of, quote, a new country. We're going to Stephen Mackey on this first. What do you think,
Oh, thank goodness.
Balaji and others? They're going to make their own country. Would we even want to live there? Does anyone really want to live in a corporate controlled country? But here it is. The libertarian crypto bros are here for you, Mac.
I'm not one to gossip, but I will. At last I heard when he was coming up with his network state book, which by the way, I did buy and skim through it. And then I ended up buying like a shortened version of it and just like kind of blazing through that much more quickly. But it really just was him just meandering on and on about how like you need digital money, you need to build like influence and, you know, kind of get enough people congregated here. And then you organize in these such manners. And then eventually you make your way back to, you know, down to the physical world. Like this is how you jumpstart a new, you know, country or something like that. And to me, it just sounded like a playbook for like digital narcissism. So I would just like, this doesn't really seem like a very good thing to do for me, like personally. But you know, this kind of leans into the whole like meta governance folks, and you know, the DAO people, and the region, solar punk, that sort of whole idealism. And so I'm sure it's all in good faith. You know what I mean? You know, just, you know, with his own sparkle of, you know, Balaji idealism in there. But, you know, otherwise, like, it's just another one of those things that's like, it's a good headline. It's a good topic. It's a good thing to talk about and also to like make fun of. But at the end of the day, you know, we're nerds. We don't always elucidate on our like, you know, grand visions of what the future can be like, you know, very well. And in hindsight, they usually don't age very well. So, you know, this might end up being one of those cases.
It does seem like a good idea until you remember everything that you know about countries, about nationalism, about languages, about tradition, about the individuals who live there. And for me, it goes back to this basic idea where we already have the internet. The internet is the place where we can be who we want to be or be anonymous or be a name or whatever you want to be. But it's not a real place. It's not a physical place. And the things that make the internet don't transfer well to physical places. You can't digitally replicate an endless supply of things like you can on the internet. So I think it's very interesting they keep trying this thing. but they definitely have a lot of ideas and a lot of money, so it might go through. Ben, Ark, what do you think about the businessmen starting their own country somewhere? It doesn't say where.
I mean, historically, within our space, we've had lots of these projects which have been an utter flop. Um, I was lucky enough actually over the summer to be hosted in Prosper in Honduras, in Roatan, which is a private city project. I was very skeptical going there because I thought that, perhaps they would be taking advantage of the locals and they wouldn't be a great employer. But I did quite an extensive bit of research, like quizzing the locals outside of the project, and then what people who are working within the project as well, and that they were good employers. They paid more than other places in Roatan, and the place actually had a pretty good vibe. Like there was a bunch of very enthusiastic tech people, like building projects, sharing ideas. There is something about when you get a bunch of like-minded people in a meet space. I think we have this in Bitcoin. We have had these important meet spaces like Room 77 in Berlin or Polis in Prague, where just getting people in the same room, like get some share ideas, think big, create projects, and those spaces have put out a lot of good projects. When I was in Prosper, I kind of got that vibe, and I was thinking, although, like personally, I'm a bit more on the lefty side when it comes to the anarchist doctrine. But if I was a younger guy and I didn't have a family and I was a digital nomad, it was a nice spot in the Caribbean, safe, fun, beach parties, like-minded people you can share ideas with, pretty cheap as well to get a condo there. They haven't been shilling their project as much as, so like quite often with these free cities, they'll make a big hoo-ha and shill the project before it's even become a thing, and then usually they flop. Whereas I found with Prosper, it was a bit more low-key. They hadn't really been talking about it so publicly, and I think they wanted to kind of build it up first, build a treasury, which they have done. They got big backers, Peter Thiel, Brian Armstrong, those sorts of people are backing these things. There is an element of no, I think my internet left for me. No.
Looks like we're losing Ben's internet connection there. But of course, I'd always thought with the digital nomad thing, the point of it was to be digital and to be a nomad. I never thought that digital nomads all wanted to hang out together in one place. That sounds like a terrible, bad-smelling idea. I'm reminded of the movie Grosse Pointe Blank, where Dan Aykroyd is trying to get John Cusack to join a union of assassins. And John Cusack says, no, I'm a lone assassin, a lone gunman. I work by myself. That's kind of the whole point of the assassin thing, which I also thought was the point of the nomad and the Bitcoin thing. Vlad Costa, what do you think? Would you like to live in a government run by corporations?
Well, don't you already live in a government run by corporations? That's one interesting question to ask. But at the same time, this reminds me of, first of all, there was the Citadel meme that was circulating around the Bitcoin space at one point. I'm just shilling my stickers, don't mind me, on video. So people were saying we have read all of these fancy books by these smart people, and we figured out everything. And the reason why societies have failed before is that they had fiat money, right? So now that we have sound money, we can establish our own flavor of feudalism, basically, where if you have this amount of Bitcoin, you're gonna automatically be part of the social class. And if you have less than 1 Bitcoin, you're gonna clean our toilets. But we're gonna be peaceful and we're gonna be organized and blah, blah, blah. And there were a lot of these memes, like which place are you going to have in a Bitcoin citadel? And my point was always, I hope you guys realize that a very effective way for any adversary of Bitcoin, which is also a nation state and has an army, to take you down is to just send one nuke. And basically all of these guys are extinct and nobody's going to be using this network, or not as much as before. It's just a silly utopia, which does not rely on the realities of geopolitics. There's also a government or a state, or I don't know how I should call it. It's called Liberland, and it's between Serbia and Croatia, if I'm not mistaken. It's just this tiny piece of land, and their business basically is selling citizenship to a bunch of people. And the value proposition of it is that you can buy your passport and then use that to register to Kraken or a bunch of KYC exchanges that enable you to do that, and you pay zero tax. You don't have to report anything. So some people do that for whatever reason, but they don't actually live there. They just buy the passport. And it reminds me of a book which I read when I was a teenager by Jules Verne. I'm not sure if that's a popular author in the United States, but here in Europe, they make you read that in school. But it's called The Island with, what do you call this?
Dr. Moreau?
No. It's the one with an island that's called Standard Island, and it's floating in international waters. And all the richest people are living there, and the roads are paved with gold, and everything is of the highest quality. And it tells the story of this island from the perspective of this quartet of musicians who are playing on the island in the fanciest salons and with the richest people in the world. And it just shows you this utopia. Yeah, I read that in school. Thank you, girlfriend, for interrupting me. So it basically presents this utopia, and it shows you exactly how it falls apart. In Romanian, it's called Insula cu elice, which means the island that has a propeller, which is the part of the helicopter that propels the vehicle. The island with a propeller or something.
I think it might be the Fantastic Island, but I haven't read it, so I'm not familiar.
Anyway, it's pretty much like that. You have to read that to understand that you're not going to change human nature just because you have a different type of government or different politicians. You're going to see that in every type of political regime. You're going to find the same kinds of people and the same problems, regardless of how fair or how corrupt it is, or how liberal or how authoritarian. The best part is when you get to choose where you're going to live. And that's the most beautiful side of life, when you can decide that you're going to move somewhere else where everyone around you shares the same values, or makes you feel safe, or gives you the kind of incentives or rewards or benefits that you seek. So, yeah, that's all I had to say.
Well,
So
and
I got cut off there. Where did I get up to on my little rant?
I don't know.
What was I talking about? Prosper in Honduras, in Roatan?
You talked about Prosper in Honduras, yeah.
Oh, there we are. Okay, and I was pleasantly surprised. And so there is an element of the free city movement where the idea is that they buy up a plot of land in somewhere which is quite economically poor, and then there is a little bit of wealth which then spills over into the region, and then creates jobs and opportunities. Now, in Roatan, on the island of Roatan, there is a bunch of startups and businesses and people who've gone to Prospera, and then they live in Prospera, and then they've set up businesses, and they're training and employing local people. So there is an element of some economic stimulus which is happening in the area in which they're located. So I had to kind of revisit some of my own assumptions on how horribly ridiculous these projects are when I went there, and I thought there was actually some good practice there, and it seemed to be doing good. I mean, I'm all for people experimenting with different ways of living, but I think freedom of movement, freedom of association is very important, and you definitely don't want that wealth disparity dystopia where you have the poor people who live outside and they come and work in the fancy place. But there was definitely a back and forth with the locals to help bring up the locals. And the Bitcoin Center in Roatan, if anyone goes out, again, there's a great video on the Ellenbits YouTube on this. The Bitcoin Center in Roatan, they've done so much outreach with schools and businesses and communities. They've onboarded like 75 shops to accept Bitcoin on the island of Roatan. So it's not all about hoarding wealth and being the masters of mankind, the rich elite locked up in your fancy jewel clad palace. There is an element of it benefiting the locals. If I don't think they will, but if this project, which the article is talking about, does the same, then I'm not sure that's necessarily a bad thing, because Prosper in Roatan seems to be a good thing for Roatan.
Well, I'm glad that they're helping people. And I'm glad they're helping the local people, but it's just hard to imagine, like to take the example of Puerto Rico, you have all these people that don't want to pay taxes, who don't want to share their wealth, and all of a sudden they're going to get to Puerto Rico and decide to share their wealth. So it just seems very hard for me to take, and I just don't trust these businessmen to run our governments as much as I
I
run
mean,
them to
that's
run our
that's a very good point as
corporations.
well. Like personally, I'm a massive fan.
Well, Ben needs to get better internet. But let's go on to Kyle Forkey. Kyle, what do you think about these crypto bros who want to start their own countries?
Their their thinking kind of aligns with my thinking from like maybe like 2020-ish. You know, I had these ideas around smart contracts and you know, forming governance structures around them. And I won't expound on this part right here too much because all roads just lead back to the efficient market hypothesis doesn't work. It just does not work, and you can extrapolate from there. But basically, you know, if you try to form a government around smart contracts or whatever they're thinking, that was my interpretation. I had my Chat GPT assistant ask Chat GPT to summarize it, and then I got a summarized version. So I might have, you know, a lack of granularity here, but that was my takeaway. But either, you know, if you want to make decisions, it has to be market driven. And if it's not market driven and it's just like a, you know, horizontal structure, then the system will fail to accrue value. There's no point in buying in, basically. And so you either wind up with an oligarchy, or it's just a failed model. And then you have to wrap all that up with the fact that the system itself needs to be secured in physical reality in some way, namely a military. And, you know, I tried to put together a thought exercise on how like a municipal garbage collection service would work with smart contracts. And that by itself was tough. I cannot imagine anybody figuring out some kind of decentralized way of deploying military assets without it just being some guy, you know, holding the keys. So it's, yeah, it just, it doesn't seem possible to me, but you know, who knows?
It is possible that the people who are in charge wouldn't mind it becoming an oligarchy, so they're
Yeah,
okay with that disadvantage. Let's move on to the exit question. Stephen Mackey, you get to decide, where would you live? Forced prediction. You could live in seasteading, where they make little fake islands, or you live on connected boats. You could live in Lieberland, as Vlad said, a small strip of land in between Serbia and Croatia. Or you could live in Bellagiville, one of these new corporate-funded, blockchain-based societies. Where would you live?
I just have to open up and say in context that I love the United States of America and I prefer to stay here. But if I had to choose, I would definitely not choose Lieberland or Liberland. I don't want to live in Balaji's commune. I guess if I have to, I'll live on a bunch of floating boats. And I'd rather live on a floating tiki artificial sand island self-sovereign nation in the middle of the Pacific than to be a part of a commune or go to some random place where I'm just like some ghost digital citizen.
All right, Mackey's going to take his chance in the ocean with the sharks. Vlad Costa, where would you live? Seasteading, a small isthmus in between Serbia and Croatia, or these new corporate digital states?
Well, I don't know. Just ask them to compete and see which one offers me the best bang for the buck, because they all want my tax money, right? That's why they're doing this. It's not anyone performing any act of goodwill. So basically, which one is going to offer me the best quality of life for the price that I pay in taxes? That's the question. Based on what I know and what I understand of the climate, I think I would be fine in Eastern Europe between Serbia and Croatia. just because I'm not too far away from there. So it's a very similar climate. I think I can get by and survive in pretty good conditions. But otherwise, I don't know. What does Balaji offer me? Give me a call, Balaji.
I can say that the seasteaders are offering free life jackets, but they are not shark proof. So it might all work out in the end. Kyle Forkey, where would you live? Seasteading, Lieberland, or Balaji's digital states?
Don't choose the Balaji Diddy party.
I guess I would know one of the people if I did the boat thing. I suppose Steven would be there. I'd probably just take the boats and hang out with Steven on the boats. I don't want to be in the cult or whatever the commune has going on. We saw how that went with what was the name? Whatever. There's that FBI shootout from the 80s. That's what comes to mind. I don't want to be part of that. And Lieberland, I just don't like the name. I would take the boats.
I would take the boats because the branding.
That's just what they said in the fantastic book Quality Land. They said the country was originally supposed to be called Equality Land, but who would buy a product from Equality Land when you could get a quality product from Quality Land? I think some very interesting answers. I think Mackey's right. The United States or wherever you are now is probably the best place to live, given these alternatives. Seasteading sounds like the most independent of the ones. But once again, if you run out of food, if you run out of fresh water, if you run out of solar panels, whatever it is, a complete disaster. Better to be on land. A couple more issues.
Hold on,
you.
Oh,
Ben's back.
What about me?
Well, no one can see you. We're not
Bloody
even
hell.
here. But Ben, where would you
what?
want to live? Seasteading, Lieberland, or Balaji's digital estates?
I live in the greatest place in the world, which is South Wales, in the woods, in my little wooden house, off grid, shitty internet, brilliant. However, I'm gonna shill this this Prosper place in Honduras again. As I said, even though I'm like a lefty anarchist, I like decision making, extreme decision making from the bottom up, which is kind of what we have here. I would legitimately spend, I don't know, a year or two in Prosper, which is a free city. You had a good vibe and lots of interesting people there, and it was pretty cheap to rent. It was in a beautiful location, a beautiful island with beautiful people. So yeah, like I would happily live in that free city, which is quite a thing for me to say, I must admit, considering.
They're always islands, these little places. Always islands.
When maybe we should start supporting Chipotle.
Well, the other, let me just say as well, the other cool thing about the Prosper project, and I sound like a Michelle now, but I'm really just, it was interesting, was that they're setting up multiple free cities around Central South America. And the idea would be that if you had a business which operated in one country like Honduras, and then if they had another one of these free cities in El Salvador or wherever else, then you could then just easily transfer your operations to those different locations, and then maybe like you could operate, you would instantly have easy access to those other jurisdictions. So there's some legs in it. It's not all, rich people just trying to stash their money. There is some good stuff probably from these projects. And like Vlad said, it's a competition. One of them will win out.
I don't know. That sounds like a European Union or a United States. It reminds me of when Tesla invented the bus.
No, it's not.
So it reminds multiple people on this big car, and it could stop at multiple places on a pattern. Like
no, it reminded. There was actually an element of it which reminded me of the Rajavan democratic confederalism, where the Kurds had they were separated geographically, but they wanted to have one kind of nation or following all the same rules. So they set up that idea of the democratic confederalism, which was and for a good time in northern Syria, that was the thing which was pushing back the Taliban. And that was a real anarchist experiment, which had a lot of good things come out of it. So different people experimenting with different ways of living. Like, who are we to stop that? Although I agree, this article, these crypto bros are probably going to fail utterly horribly.
but they're going to burn a lot of money first, probably hundreds of millions of dollars with nothing to show for it, but they have to do it. They have to do it. We're running out of time. I just want to let you guys know, I'm sure everyone knows, we all watch the financial news, that the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates by half a percentage point, 0.5 or 50 basis points, however you want to say it. This will basically lower interest rates, making money cheaper, encouraging borrowing, encouraging spending, which usually leads to a rise in risk assets such as stocks and, of course, Bitcoin. This is a big deal a couple days ago, but not so much now. And then finally, as I continued to dance upon the political grave of RFK Jr., whom which the people who gave money to will get absolutely nothing. They'll get nothing. RFK, according to this tweet, had to tell his wife Cheryl Hines not only about his affair with Olivia Newsy, who used to work at New York Magazine and was covering RFK Jr. for the campaign, he also has to tell her that he's being investigated for cutting off a dead whale's head with a chainsaw. So much for the political career of RFK Jr. We're running out of time. Let's go to predictions or story of the week. Ben Ark, the Invisible Man, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry about my internet. It's been pretty dire. Can I share screen, Mr. Thomas? Help me up.
All right, you can try.
Oh yeah, giggity giggity. All right, so I was shuttling
It's a bridge too far. Your audio stopped.
I just want to chill a little bit more, but we have the Alan Bits
All
in
right,
Phoenix.
Ben, I think your audio stopped working. when you did
Can you
your
hear me now?
screen share. So
Can you hear
maybe
me?
just sum up really quickly. We can kind of hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, just a little. Go ahead.
What about now? There is a video on the Bitcoin space in Roatan with Dusan from Amity Age. It's really very good. I made that video and I'm very proud of it. And then also check out the tutorials, the Phoenix D tutorial with Alan Bits. But yeah, check out that it's a beautiful spot. Check out the Bitcoin Center in Roatan. It's quite spectacular. Dusan is
All right, Ben's almost there. Check out the Rowan Center on the LN Bits YouTube. Sounds great. Vlad Costa, a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
I'm not very good with predictions, even though I still believe that Monero is gonna outperform Bitcoin over maybe the short to medium term until someone in Bitcoin wakes up and says, hey, we need privacy for this. We need to make it fungible. But I do have a story of the week, a bunch of them actually. The first one is that my girlfriend is making Pepes, and if you want to help her pay for tuition for medical school, you can DM her and she's gonna turn you into a Pepe. And we did watch the Pepe documentary last night, and I think we are on the team which is trying to save the reputation of Pepe and make him not offensive. And anyway, there is this series of YouTube videos launched on the YouTube channel that's called Hemi, and Bitcoin Core developer Jeff Garzik is talking about various topics concerning Bitcoin and the early days, and I think there are a couple of ones about Satoshi Nakamoto's identity, and it's interesting to see the opinions of this guy who has been in the project since 2010 or something, and he was also the first big blocker. He wrote the first proposal to increase the block size back in 2010, and Satoshi told everyone, don't run this software because it's not going to be in consensus with the rest of it. But he has been around for a long time, and he has some very interesting views about the creation of Bitcoin and the state of the project. And I did watch everything. It's so you have about 20-30 minutes of content, but spread across 2-minute videos. And once you watch those, you're gonna feel like you've learned something today. So after you're done watching this, check out this Hemi YouTube channel with Jeff Garzik. And also don't forget to subscribe to Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I still put out good stuff.
All right. Thanks so much, Vlad. And glad to see the Pepes. It sounds like fun. Kyle Forkey, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
It was like a long-term prediction. I think most of us here, and probably a lot of people in the crypto community, have you know, we're finally rid of XRP and Ripple, and not really gonna have to hear about it anymore as it slowly cascades down the ranks. But I think 2 times over the past decade, it's just come out of nowhere. And I think it's gonna come back one more time. It's what is it? It's death rattle. And it's going to surprise everybody, and that's my prediction. It's not to say it's good or anyone should care. It's just going to be it's just like me guessing the exact price of Bitcoin next week. It's going to happen, and I'll be right, and that's the only reason I'm saying this.
It is very possible that we haven't seen the end of Ripple, although it is named after a great Grateful Dead song. Let's go to Stephen Mackey. Do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Prediction. I'm gonna go with prediction here because that's always fun. I'm going to predict that the elections don't really affect the price of Bitcoin too much. The ETF stuff doesn't really affect Bitcoin's price too much. And I think it's going to be some other random catalyst that will come out that will, over the next few months, that will be the actual cause of that. Seems like from a regulatory standpoint, people have gotten pretty good at regulating the greater crypto market. So big time scammers and stuff like that, coming down in the news to ruin the markets and stuff like that. I think it's pretty much no different than normal financial, regulatory crimes and stuff at this point, at least as far as the US media goes. So I think overall, as far as on the US Western hemisphere, I think most things trend to be bullish, but no one particular thing will outweigh the other. So I'm just overall net optimistic.
That sounds great. I've heard lots of people saying the political events will change the price and it'll be 20K higher if this candidate wins or that candidate wins. But I agree with you, Mackie. I don't think Bitcoin's going to care. It's a much larger thing to move around than people think. It's not just ideas and momentum. It's a lot more. It's money. I just wanted to give a shout out to Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister. We had a really fun show yesterday about a prediction that he made 10 years ago. He said that instead of buying a car for $50,000, you should take $10,000, put it into Bitcoin, see how it goes. He was very fun on both sides. He said it could go to zero, it could go to 100K. It turned out it went to $1.5 million. So shout out to Adam Meister. Check it out right here on the World Crypto Network if you want to watch our conversation about his prediction of Bitcoin price from 10 years ago. He also makes some great shows out there on the Bitcoin Meister channel and on Twitter and stuff like that. So thanks so much for our guests. Thanks for everybody giving us a thumbs up down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.